Welcome to Interwoven, a podcast where we follow the winding threads of literature as they weave together stories and voices across time and cultures. Hi everyone, welcome back to Interwoven. Today I'm joined by Ella, Libby, and Issy, and we're going to be talking about creative criticism. It's a topic that I must say I'm quite new to. And so I'm pretty excited to hear more about creative criticism, what it is, how it works, how it changes our sort of study of literature, specifically medieval literature, because all of us here at Oxford are English undergraduates studying specifically medieval literature. And yeah, how are you guys doing today?
Very good. Excited for some free matcha later.
Yeah, that does sound good. Yeah.
Very good too. Yeah.
It's also very good.
Yeah, and Issy's here, so she's the genius behind my intro music, so you'll finally be hearing from her. But yeah, to start off with, what is creative criticism? Because I think the very definition of it is something that can kind of be contested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been currently trying to plan like a creative critical event for the Medieval Society Meakstappen that I co-run with Izzy and also everybody here. But that's something I've been trying to think about. It's really hard. I think the most simple way that I can explain it is like thinking about how creative processes can be treated as a form of like research and study, and what engaging in creativity does for our study of like particular topics. But then also you think about the fact that like every time even you just like take notes on something or you write an essay, even though we might not consider that like creative, that is a creative process as well, because you're putting something into existence. So it's also thinking about the creativity in things you might not typically consider creative. But yeah, things like poetry, collaging, fibre arts, I know people who've been like literally making manuscripts from scratch and like as a form of learning about material texts. Many other things. But like understanding that those things aren't like a lesser form of research. They are uniquely like important in helping us learn about things. And sometimes they can even teach us things that we wouldn't be able to get if we're just sitting down at a computer reading things over and over again. I don't know if anybody else has any definitions.
I think we had a really good manuscript class thing last week, and one of the main takeaways for me was like learning through like your hands and through interaction with an object. And obviously the only way to learn about manuscripts is to do that physically, but just more widely about kind of engaging with critical ideas through non-conventional ways. So instead of sort of reading, writing notes, kind of things that are using your body and engaging you in other ways, how that can be, it's also a more accessible way to learn.
I was just going to say that, I think there's something very powerful about like we're kind of talking about ideas of things that you don't get through certain things, or the idea that these are lesser forms. So I think there's often a lot of like recuperative kind of study that happens through creative criticism. So we'll probably start name dropping loads of people off the top of my head. Laura Varnum, who teaches at Univ College here at Oxford, she has done a series of poems which is ongoing from the point of view of Grendel's mother in Beowulf. So thinking about how mothers are mistreated, how women are mistreated, violence against women, and like putting that at the centre of her creative work on Beowulf. So yeah, it's often a very accessible and often like very subversive, like in a good way.
I think it also like allows you to intimately understand the workings of everything that you're like dealing with. Like with the manuscripts, for example, you're able to understand if you're going to be doing, like, I don't know, I've got a parallel pen at the moment and I want to start learning the Gothic, like a textura script. And then you have to physically understand how they've made those lines, what has gone into it. Like, cool. Even without being able to sharpen something the way that the medieval, like, scripts did with their, like, quills, you're still understanding how that script happened, because if you looked at it like in the material class that we had last week, a lot of the script of certain manuscripts was identical. You could see the A's in multiple areas and they looked the exact same, whereas on other manuscripts you could see that it was a lot like faster, like their writing, it was slanted, and the A's or the B's or whatever they were writing, they all looked different from another, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of some of the reading I did about Virginia Woolf's reception of the Paston Letters, and this one critic sort of situated her reception in terms of like late Victorian museum curation practices, which I thought was really interesting, and it kind of reminds me of creative criticism, but I think it almost takes it too far. So what the late Victorian period was when sort of medieval study was being more accessible, and it was becoming something that people from beyond academic contexts could increasingly engage with. And one of the things that I thought was interesting but then also quite problematic was how certain medievalists would sort of raid like museums for manuscripts and cut out illustrations from medieval manuscripts to create their own collages, which I think was interesting, and kind of, yeah, I think you see that revival of like collaging in modern day creative criticism, but I think it doesn't go so far as cutting out illustrations from manuscripts.
I mean, it reminds me a lot of like when the 18th century was the century where forgery became massive, and I would argue then in terms that could be like a way of creative criticism, because you've got to engage with that text very critically to try and do that forge it.
I think it reminds me, one of our friends was saying about the prologue to Sir Orfeo.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It was just,
That was,
I mean, one of you might be able to explain it better, but this guy just decided to write it himself because he thought it needed a prologue.
Yeah.
And that is the ultimate creative criticism. But I also think it shows that it's important to mark where you're being creative and where you're being criticism.
Yeah, I think it's interesting though as well, because Sir Orfeo is it's a Breton lay, like kind of, I'm gonna say like Middle English romance. Actually not. I think it's attested like throughout a wide span of time. But like with medieval romance, you have these things being iterated over and over again. You have these tropes. You have these very like, it's a very kind of like pleasure and enjoyment driven genre. It's built for entertainment. So it completely makes sense that you have like this Hek neth to me gore de men like at the beginning of every tale, and you're like, oh, that's just what it is. But then our friend was like, no, this guy just put it in there. He stole it from another romance and put it in because he thought he needed it. So it is very interesting. Like you have these ideas of like, I don't know, a lot of the stuff we do in first year about like theory and where does the text start, when does it end, like is it actually the case that these texts are just being like expanded, like is there such a thing as the pure text? We had a lovely talk from my tutor Aish Lazakani on Christian Islamic mysticism, and one of the things we were talking about is how both the English Christian mystic Julian of Norwich and the Iraqi Islamic mystic Rabia al-Adawiya, both of these women, we don't fully know who they were. The reason we know who they were is because of like the texts that they were built from. But you have all these creative responses, particularly for Julian, but we were talking about how Rosalia's new album, Lux, that came out last November, has this song about Rabia on it, and it's one of the only examples we could think of like creative work. But you have all these like new layers and new stories of these women like built on, like building up this idea of the person they are, but we also don't know who they were because the first like attestation of their work comes through literature. So we don't even know Julian's name was Julian because she was an anchorite, like a religious recluse in St. Julian's Church, but also Julian could have been her actual name. And then Rabia, all the stories we know about her life come from like myth and the writings around her. So yeah, the line between what is the kind of quote-unquote original text and what are the creative critical responses, like, is maybe a bit blurrier than we'd think.
What you said about, like, there not being a fully original text, I think is something that you see in, like, intertextuality more generally, which I know Izzy is very passionate about, so she'll probably expand on this. But, like, the whole Roland Barthes idea of literature being a tissue of quotations, and I think the medieval feeds into that so well, because we don't, so much of it is lost, and so much of it is constantly being discovered and like rediscovered. So I think just medieval study itself is something that's reiterative. It's not something that has any sort of final conclusive answer to questions. And I think with every new answer you then raise new questions about the medieval world.
And I'm thinking about like the word like tissue in itself. Like you think of like in French, tissu means fabric, and you have like these over like it's something that's created, it's woven together. But also you think of tissue in the sense of like human skin. Like what is natural, what is created, like even within the word itself, I guess.
Oh yeah, that's so true. And and like it kind of reminds me of reader response theory and that lecture from our tutor Rachel Burns on Iser and like the filling of gaps. And I think creative criticism allows you to do that, where your more personal effective response allows you to fill in gaps or holes in medieval research or research within academic contexts. What about you, Izzy? I know you work on like very cool scarves and as a form of criticism.
I do, yeah. I have become somewhat known for making medieval scarves, which was kind of an accidental stumbling across of creative criticism. Because it started as an assignment to make a creative response to, I think it was just anything in the Exeter book. And I am I like to knit and crochet in my spare time. And so I thought, oh, that's kind of easy, that's fun, something to do. And I really enjoyed it, and it sort of made me begin to think about these texts in a slightly different way. And I think it is that entire idea of like fabric, things being woven, intertextuality as this woven thing. Very fitting for the podcast. But I think the one that because I actually had to kind of justify it most, was I made a Cunewolf scarf quite recently. And because, I can give a little description of what I find cool about Cunewolf, is that he, throughout his poems, interlaced his initials in runes as kind of an anagram spread out. And then so as you're reading it, you're sort of either subconsciously or consciously putting those together and doing your own little mental mind craft to make his name. And then it's this whole thing of him wanting you to pray for him and kind of has this underlying religious thing. But then when I was making the scarf, I was realising that I was this 20-year-old girl in 2026 weaving his name into this fabric, and he was this medieval guy weaving his name into a manuscript. And I'm like, he really did get his wish of people remembering his name. But I very much felt kind of that connection there, and I think that's just what I like about the medieval. I think I was very skeptical about studying it because of it's so long ago, how relevant can it really be? Is it not just this esoteric thing that academics do to make themselves feel good about themselves? But actually it's not necessarily the here and now, it's everything in between that's really cool, and that the only way we have access to these texts is through centuries of editors and facsimiles, people writing criticism on them. And so to get to hold Cunewolf's hand through my scarf was just really nice.
And also Rachel one day, who's your tutor who you gave the scarf to, she was really cold and she went to a lecture wearing the scarf. So Cunewolf is literally not only are you kind of supporting Cunewolf through remembering his name as he wanted to, but Cunewolf's also keeping Rachel warm, you know? And that's really lovely. He is literally there in the present day.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about the medieval world. You can go from matters of life and death and the soul, but then ultimately also just see daily life within the same almost bound or leap within a page. Cunewolf is asking for salvation, but then here we are, just putting him into more daily life of contexts without necessarily eradicating that sort of fastness. And yeah, I think that's really powerful. And what you said also reminded me of how a lot of medieval literature is almost dialogic, especially Old English literature, where you have this idea of the material world speaking back to you in the form of the Exeter book riddles, and then one of my favorite poems, Thureth, where a book literally praise for its creator and is thankful towards the creator for having made it. And I think that's so cool. And creative criticism taps into that, the autonomy of the material world as something to be respected almost. And I think that also coincides with growing interest in thing theory and just material studies in general.
I was going to say, like, the medieval, even though it is old, it's still being used in everyday life now, even in popular, like, it's still really popular when you look at something like The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. It lives on, even though it's not overtly sort of like, it's not made obvious to the public that it is influenced by the Old English tales, particularly like Beowulf, and you've got like the Sigmund's Dragon and the Ring, which is obviously a massive part of Lord of the Rings, which is really interesting. But then you've also got all these rewritings of people making adaptations and sort of like even adapting them into children's books, like Michael Morpurgo, for example, with like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And I can't remember one of the authors, but I gave a picture book of Beowulf to my little brother as well. So it's like it's still living on creatively, because not everything is following obviously those stories in all its factuality, like in all of its like entirety. It's being adapted to make it easier for the modern world to understand it. And we can look at that in translations too as a creative criticism, because at the end of the day you are being creative with it. If you're writing it in prose or if you're writing it in poetry, is the meter different? Is the alliterative like aspect different too? Because at the end of the day, that is, you're creating something completely new from something old.
And this also reminds me of like the fact that even within these medieval texts themselves, you can almost kind of read them as their own like quote unquote medievalism, also because the concept of the medieval, the Middle Ages, is like it's referential, so it's a middle age, like it's a nothing gap between the classical civilizations and the people in the kind of Renaissance who coined the term. So it's this kind of very movable, very strange, weird term, and it's kind of like the medievals, quote unquote medieval. Like if you think about Beowulf, and he's drawing on all these old like Germanic myths, and like all the, not Beowulf himself, but like the Beowulf poet is drawing on these. And then if you think about, it's also the same in, there's this poem called Deor in the Exeter book, which is just full of allusions. It's like allusion after allusion after allusion to more like Germanic myths. And then even if you think about things like my favourite little things in the Exeter, not in the Exeter book, it's in like medical texts, it's the charms, the magical charms.
Yeah, that's so fun.
They're lovely.
They're so good.
But they are like, they have all these allusions to like specific biblical things or particular prayers or liturgical things. They have this like really complex network of very old things sometimes. And the interesting things about charms is that they are dependent on being spoken aloud to kind of function. So they'll have these instructions that say like "ond quath," which means and like say thus in Old English. And then you have to say these words for the charm to work. Like the charm isn't complete just written down on paper, and the charm also probably would have preceded it being written down on paper. So it's a bit like us kind of retelling, like every time the charm is retold in a different place with different things. Like you have to get all of these different elements. Like one of my favourites is the delayed birth charm for a woman struggling to take her child to term, or struggling to like keep a pregnancy. One of the things at the end is you have to go to a river, you have to take this milk, and then you have to do all these complicated things with like spitting milk and like drinking the river water and like spinning around and saying these words. But like that is going to be different in each scenario, like different milk from a different cow, you're going to be at a different river, you're going to be at a different place. Like these texts, even in the medieval times, are being rewoven and spoken again and again and again, and they're different every single time. So it's not like this weird like modern thing that we're necessarily putting onto it. Not that that would be a bad thing as well. I'm a big fan of anachronism if it's done very consciously, but also it's not anachronistic as well, which I think is very interesting.
I think it's also really important to highlight that we haven't said anything about the passivity of creative criticism, and the medieval is a very active process. It doesn't stop. It's just ongoing and over again, completely rewoven, like you've said, over and over again. There's no passivity in it.
That also kind of takes me back to what you said about tissue as something inside you, and I think like closer to the later Middle Ages, the idea of the self as text as well, and the embodied.
Jesus is a body. Jesus is a manuscript.
Yeah, the embodied nature of literature as something that is inscribed upon you, and that like logocentric idea of language and flesh being inseparable.
Yes.
I think is really powerful, because then it makes any creative endeavor, whether that's literary or artistic, almost seem like an inherent biological part of you. And I think that that's so powerful, and I think that that's like something I've only ever seen in the medieval world, as far as I'm aware. And that's why I think that the process of writing, of any kind of literary creation during the medieval period, has so many different metaphors. Like Hugeberg, she's an 8th century nun in Germany, and she records the travels of her brother because she's unable to travel. But at the beginning, she describes herself as like sowing seeds through her writing, and I just loved that. Like writing for her is in itself a way of travel, a way of securing autonomy. I think creative criticism taps back into that. It's where you give yourself the freedom to just immerse yourself into the medieval world. And yeah, so what kind of creative critical projects are you guys working on, if you are working on any right now?
I am currently trying to make a lino cut of said delayed birth charm, partly based on I went to go and see some actually late medieval, not early medieval, birthing scrolls in the Wellcome collection recently. So I was thinking about those and how these women were wearing these strips of parchment, like we now know through protein analysis, like they had amniotic fluid on them, they had blood on them. Like during birth, they have these like prayers and images of the crucifixion on them. They would like encircle the woman during labour, so she would kind of feel comforted. And then the delayed birth charm kind of does a similar thing, in that you have these really profoundly human anxieties about like conception and like childbirth and being able to like raise a child. But I was really interested in how these charms, like, I don't know, they like almost cradle the mother and make her like a little baby as well. So my idea is that I'm trying to like make the like some of the words of the charm and like the river in the charm and some of the leaves, because it's very like based in the natural world, almost like a uterus and like amniotic fluid encircling this woman. So that's what I'm currently doing. I was just thinking also I might actually have my Julian pocket shrine with me.
Oh, that's
if
so
you'd like
cool.
me to talk about that.
Yes.
Bear with me 1 second.
Oh my gosh, it is so cool. If I can find a way, I'm going to add photos into my podcast description, because it is really cool.
I can do my best audio description as well. So
Shout out your craft account as well.
Oh my
picture of
gosh,
it on
yes.
Yes, I think it is maudcherig.craft, so that is MOD.
It will be in my podcast description too.
Okay, CEARIG is the first word. It's Old English, but thank you so much. Yes, so you pick it up. It's like a little square parcel package thing. It's very folded up. It's denim on the outside with different coloured embroidery thread running stitches, and it has a button in the middle. And then it has finger loop woven cord around the outside, which is a medieval weaving technique. So I tried that. That was really fun. That was a fun way of kind of practicing medieval stuff. And then you unwind it. It also has a little star on the end, because I thought that would be fun. But you open it up and it's kind of a cruciform shape, so it's like cross-shaped. But, okay, I'm going to do my best to describe this. In the middle, there's a square with a painting I did of Julian of Norwich in acrylic on fabric, and she's holding a cat because ancresses were allowed to have only one cat. I think the line from this anchoretic instruction manual is Jene skulle haben mina levre systeren nan bästa but cat Anna. So it's, you shall not have, my dear sisters, any creature but one cat. So the cats were allowed to come in and out of the anchor hold where these women had taken a vow of seclusion. So Julian's holding a cat. We don't know if she had a cat, but she's usually depicted with a cat. And there's little beads, some cross-stitch. I'm really, really into Romanesque architecture, which is very niche. I love the zigzags, I love the lines, I love the city creatures. So I've done some like zigzags and circles around her. And then there's kind of a border of recycled fabric from one of my granny's old dresses, and I put like a sort of like a vine stitch in green fabric around it. And then on the other side, the four kind of remaining parts of the cross, you have I have a hazelnut, because Julian famously talks about seeing all that is made in the quantity of a hazelnut, and she worries that it will fall apart, but the love of God keeps it together. I have a little button that has kind of got swirly cross patterns on it that I found. It was very nice. I have a side wound, which is, we'll probably talk about the side wound at some point, because we are all very big side wound fans. This is a side wound of Christ. Lots of medieval mystics have lots of visions like about the side wound. Julian is one of them. She imagines kind of crawling into the side wound of Christ that's like a little cozy space for her to dwell. It's a bit like a womb, so it's kind of like there's this idea of the new like world in Christian theology through the crucifixion, where he got the wound, like being born through this side wound, also because it does look a lot like a vulva, which leads to some very interesting like gender theology. And then at the bottom, I just have a Julian quote that says, "Seeking is as good as beholding," which is kind of like, she worries about not being able to perceive God all the time. And she has it come to her in a vision that looking for stuff, like seeking, is as good as beholding it, even if she's striving earnestly, even if she doesn't feel faithful all the time. That is of just as much value to God as if she was super devoted. And I also have a little dove charm that I got as part of a gift for when I was confirmed when I was 14. And I'm not Catholic anymore, but I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to include it, that you have this kind of faith that grows and changes throughout time. And then just like lots of little little embroidered stars and cross-stitched flowers, and then it's blanket stitched around the outside. But yeah, you can fold it up, and it was a really fun thing to make, because it was like it's like the tissue thing. You spend this really long time with fabric, and I probably pricked myself a few times as well, so that's very appropriate. But yeah, it's very like, it's this devotional process to make it. Originally, pocket shrines would, like, I think they are mostly like made for Catholic reasons. Like, it's like this pocket kind of devotional. And this is kind of on the cusp between kind of sacred and secular, which is where I like personally find myself. But yeah, it's like you're spending this time with this really, this really old person who doesn't live anymore, but you're bringing her into the present day, and you're thinking with her, and you're meditating with her, with like every stitch, with every like creative design, putting all these things together. It's like kind of monastic reading culture, where you're reading these things over and over again, like letting them sink into you. It's like ruminatio, lectio divina, which are both styles of monastic reading. But yeah, pocket shrine, I love her so dearly, and very portable, which is very delightful.
It's reminded me of a Persian text, The Conference of the Birds. It's really good, and that idea of like the materiality of creation, and of artistic creation, literary creation, and even like physical creation, and how the hoopoe, who's an embodiment of like the spiritual Sufi leader, his beak is inscribed with the word Bismillah, which means in the name of God, and I think that's really powerful. And the hoopoe, in my opinion, almost like represents a surah in the Quran, because each surah you have to begin with Bismillah, and I feel like you're in that constant state of like almost beginning a surah when the hoopoe is, which I think is so powerful, of like constantly reliving a certain state within like textual means, in order to reach some kind of sort of divine contemplative state. But
I love that.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a really, really good poem. But yeah, do you guys...
Oh my gosh, sorry. I've creative criticism all over you guys.
No. That was... No, I will find a way to like... put that, take a photo of it and somehow show it onto the podcast.
Izzy, you should tell the good people of the internet about your Alfred jewel knitting pattern.
Oh yes, I yesterday began. I was struck with a vision.
Very fitting.
Oh, the sweetest of dreams that came to you in the middle of the night.
All the speech bearers were lying in rest.
Yes, this is from The Dream of the Root, by the way. It's a poem.
I've been mosaic, crocheting, assorted weird things. And I had the idea of doing an Alfred Jewel one just because I've been thinking about it. I think it's pretty. It's nice. It's like weirdly sentimental to me because it was found in the West Country and then it's stored or like displayed in the Ashmolean, and I'm from the West Country, and now I'm not stored in the Ashmolean, but I'm now in Oxford physically.
I'd never thought of that as a fellow
just,
West Country person.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, maybe I am the Alfred Jewel.
Yeah.
And so
actually, we're all from the West Country.
We are.
Me and Livy and Izzy.
Well, as Christian.
I'm sorry.
Honorary.
Yes. But yeah, I've just been thinking about it loads. I was going to get it tattooed and then I couldn't. I might still get it tattooed, I don't know. But yeah, thinking about it loads, think it's really pretty. And so I made a knitting chart for it. It's quite big, so it might end up being a blanket or maybe a jumper. But I'm excited. I think it's going to be really cool. And yeah, most of my creative criticism, I would say, is fibre crafts because I'm most comfortable in it. And there is just something about the weaving and the use of fibres that really reminds me of medieval study.
And the transparency of like both of your processes, and like how each weave and like each stitch is like so clearly seen and adds to the sort of beauty of what's being made is also something that reminds me of the riddles, where you yourself are being made transparent as a material object. So the way that you're being brought together is a process that, again, the reader or whoever interacts with it is very, very aware of. The process through which you're created is inherently intertwined with who you are now, which I think is really, really powerful and very cool to see. I think we discussed this at some point, me and Issy, like the temporality of that as well, and like how the past of like how it is that, I don't know, like a book was created after parchment was sort of stretched and that like past moment inevitably becoming part of your present. Is really interesting, and how you're almost like, as a book, you're almost like the afterlife of past creation because of the way that parchment is created, and that like cyclicality is also really, really interesting. And then that again feeds into creative criticism as something that is both moving forward from the medieval world but then also looking back towards it. So I think, you'll probably explain this better than I will, but like the napkin analogy, that was so cool.
I love that.
I mean, to be fair, I stole that from... Well, I didn't steal it. I learnt that from Ella.
And I learned that from someone in my college. Who learned that from
the embodiment of intertextuality.
Wow. Yes, so true.
I haven't heard it, so please explain
so
it.
Interesting.
Yes, Izzy, explain it.
It's like fully my favourite thing.
It's very cool.
So, can I use the Marjorie Kemp example?
Yeah,
of course.
So,
you can always Marjorie Kemp.
Always Marjorie Kemp. There is a mystic called Marjorie Kemp who she cried a lot.
Very true.
Amongst other things. So she was a little bit transgressive, but she, felt this very close tie to God. And there's the book of Marjorie Kemp in which she writes about these divine visions she'd have. And so that is Marjorie. Now imagine, I'm using my hand, you can't see my hands, but like a napkin. And then in the top right corner, let's say there is me in 2026, maybe crying in my room.
Yes.
And then right in the bottom left hand of the napkin, there is Marjorie Kemp crying because she's just weeping and she's having these massive, overwhelming, divine feelings. That's another thing that I think is really cool, the relationship between mystics and modern day people through experience of the body. But I will get onto that.
Very true.
So bottom left is Marjorie, top right is me. We're never going to touch. We're complete opposite ends of the napkins, destined to never meet. Sad times, until the napkin gets all scrumpled up and shoved in someone's pocket. And then all of a sudden, me and Marjorie are right next to each other. And there's this massive temporal collapse when suddenly we're in that exact same position, which I guess is through the body, at least for me. We're both women, we're both feeling, I mean, for me and Marjorie, big hormonal things as well. We're having this shared experience. And even though we're separated by so many swathes of fabric, when it's crumpled and temporarily collapsed, we're suddenly one and the same. I might have butchered that.
No, that's
cool.
very true. You just, when you have these moments where things are like put very close to the body, or they're like I guess I imagine the scrumpling like engaging in creative critical work or just critical work. You scrumple these things up and you have these really unusual but really exciting places where things on the napkin wouldn't normally touch. So you have Marjorie and Izzy, or maybe there are these other resonances. One of my favourite other ways of conceptualising kind of medieval time and using affect and emotion as a means of like kind of steering like your critical ship is this idea of Carolyn Dinshaw's touch across time. So you have these like, I don't know, it's like Marjorie reaching out to you and you're reaching back to her, and you have these very like sensory, like emotional or like tactile feelings that like connect the both of you. Like Marjorie, like she was a real woman. Like her book, The Book of Marjorie Kemp, is I think the first autobiography by like a named woman in the English language, which is pretty cool. It's kind of she's interesting autobiography wise because I think she dictated it, and also she writes it in third person, which is also absolutely delightful because it's like, it's lovely for those of us who have a weird relationship with ourselves and our body that she always refers to herself as this creature, which I love. But yeah, you have all these unusual, like, this scrumpling and, like, putting things close together. I think that's a nice thing also about the pocket shrine, is that it lives, like, close to the body, close to the skin. It's, like, in this, the kind of the inside of your clothes. You have kind of tissue and tissue again, like, lining up together. It's, like, I don't know, like, your body weight, your, like, your physical interactions with this cloth are, like, putting it together and making these unusual and fruitful and surprising and moving resonances between things that if you just had it flat on a surface wouldn't ever usually touch. Yeah.
Libby, do you want to add anything?
Not sure. I'm
No,
just trying to think. I just think it's really cool. I was just wondering, to be fair, how long did it take you to make? And also, in regards to that, you can think of that as scrumpling it up again, and you've got different corners touching as well when you fold it.
Yeah.
That otherwise wouldn't be touched if it wasn't a pocket.
Do you know what? That's such an interesting idea. I never thought about what is touching when it's folded up. So it's the way I folded it up. You have Julian the hazelnut. Oh no, wait. So you have, I think the little cross bead is on Julian's face, and then like in the next layer of fabric you have kind of the side wound and the hazelnut on top of each other, and then you have the words over the top of that. I never thought of analysing like that. It's so interesting. Like you have all these different things that you can think about. And also, like, that is not something that you get if you were just reading it. Like,
no, exactly. And if it was something that wasn't meant to be portable or folded up, those areas would never interact with each other.
That's so true.
And the use of the button with the fabric, again, you're combining it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so cool. I never thought of that. I love that.
I guess something we haven't touched on is like movie adaptations.
Ooh, this is really interesting. Someone said to me recently that they were like, "Oh, I can tell you're of high quality because you've never given me any like film recommendations." And I'm like, "Whoa, okay, don't disregard films. Films are wonderful. I just don't watch a lot of films."
That's very fair.
Yeah. But yeah, that's true.
I mean, we watched the Beowulf adaptation, which was very questionable.
Wow.
It was very heavy on the creative.
Yeah.
I mean, it's why we're advised not to watch it.
Yeah. I think it raises an interesting question though, like how far like can creative criticism go? Like how do you define that?
I've heard people describe Shrek as like medievalist. Because
I've
you
heard
think
people
about it.
praise Shrek as being one of the best medieval representations.
Lord Farquaad has that medieval bob.
He rocks it. So how is it like a medieval, like how would you explain it as being some sort of like medieval
It's got like this aesthetic.
reconfiguration?
It's got the like medieval aesthetic. Like if you think of the clothes that people wear, if you think of the kind of the castle. I mean, I haven't watched Shrek for so long. There's dragons. There's, I mean, it's a bit Chaucerian with the talking animals, but like, yeah, I think a lot of medievalism and like creative medievalism isn't kind of concerned with being accurate. It's more of this like aesthetic and this vibe. Like if you think about I don't know, if you go onto TikTok and like look for medieval outfit, or like the concept of a Ren fair is an amazing example of this, because it's not like historically accurate medieval clothing, but it's so profoundly suffused with these kind of popular ideas of what medieval is. And this is not a bad thing, this is not disparaging it in any way. It's just really interesting because like what is considered quote unquote medieval is like it becomes like worked into something else in the modern day. And I think that is part of what medievalism is today. So like that's why Shrek is kind of medievalism. It's just kind of vibes. Like you're like, wow, that feels medieval, like to a modern person, and it is. But yeah, the kind of like medieval aesthetics is so interesting to me. Like especially if you have, like I see these reels all the time of people being like, oh, women don't want to dress like this. Women want everyone to dress like this. And then you have this like people in like puffy shirts and like a little waistcoat over the top and a long skirt and a sword. And like that is not something that someone in the medieval like ages probably would have worn at any point. But it's like what medieval means today, and that is almost like just as valid because it's so powerful. It's so present. I don't know if now is a good time as well to talk about like far right medievalism.
Oh yes,
and
that would be
like the aesthetics.
That's very.
I'd like to hear more about that. I can't lie.
Okay, creepy story from my friend the other day who went to the Uffington White Horse. So she and her boyfriend were going to the Uffington White Horse for a walk, and they went to this place called Wayland Smithy, and I was like, Wayland Smithy? So Wayland is a really famous blacksmith from early medieval literature, and they stumbled upon this group of people who they thought were maybe doing some kind of like therapy-ish thing. They were reading things off, they were like saying things together, there was a fire, and then suddenly Izzy's face is like, I know where this is going. And then they started saying some very questionable stuff, started tiptoeing a bit into like the neo-Nazi waters, a bit into the xenophobic waters with like, we need to like return to this pure like Europeanness, we need to return to this kind of
But then that doesn't really make much sense because the whole reason like England and the medieval sort of like was what it was is because of people travelling from like the Germanic areas and coming over, and it's not even just white people. We had people of different races in that period, and I think that is just so easily forgotten, and I don't read loads about it either, which I'm it's a bit concerning. You can see it's quite whitewashed in my opinion.
Is. That you have this ideas of like this like even it's very easy to tiptoe into it. Like some of the linguistic people I like watch on YouTube, sometimes they'll talk about like English being corrupted by French, or they'll say, you'll have people in the comments section saying that, oh, we need, this language is so beautiful, it's been ruined, we need to get back to things. And you have this idea that older is always better, and that's not always the case. And also Old English, like as Libby said, it is this synthesis of so many different languages. It is the product of migration, it's the product of settlement, and it also has a very violent history. Like, for example, like the word that in English we use for Wales comes from Wale, which means foreigner or slave in Old English. So that's why it's so different from like Cymru in Welsh. And like there is this very ugly and violent history to a lot of early medieval literature, but some people not only will kind of elide that, but they'll also embrace that kind of mentality of like conquering. Or there was a wonderful talk in the English faculty like research seminars last term about chivalry in the far right and masculinity, and this idea of like defense. Also really strange people wanting to go on a crusade again, which you see every now and again, especially in some like very traditional Catholic like far right circles, which is so strange. And also like we don't need any more conflict in the world right now.
It's just such an odd thing to want. It's quite anachronistic as well, I feel, like wanting a crusade when we have so many other wars, but wanting to revert back to something that is like quite historical, using that particular word as well, I think it's just a bit.
And you have like even in romance you have these really complicated stories about gender and things. So there's this idea of like men being like these noble active characters and women being these passive creatures that need saving. But this is so complicated. Like one of my favourite romances that I studied last term is Le Roman de Silence, which is like an old French romance, and it's about someone who there's this woman and her husband. Like, women aren't allowed to inherit, and they're like, we're pregnant, what happens if the child is a girl? So they come up with the bright idea to raise the child as a boy, whatever the child's sex. And they're like, this is great, okay. So the child is born, the child is female, they announce that it's a boy to everyone, they raise the child as Silence. And then kind of throughout Silence's life as they grow up, you have nature and what nurture as people, and they come and argue about whether or not Silence should be a girl or should be a boy, or like what Silence's nature is. And it's really not clear cut. I remember Uska in a class saying about how they describe like silence, nature says to silence that nurture has put like poison into honey, and is like, it's like destroying their body or something. It's morphing it into something that it shouldn't be, supposedly. But you have this idea of like food and poison being like something that's very much on the borderline of what is natural, what is unnatural, because it's something that your body needs to survive, but it's also something that you have to keep putting in. And then also a lot of the language that nature uses about why she's right and that silence should be a girl is that I created you so beautiful, I used the finest clay, I chose the perfect complexion for you, and it's that silence is like nature is very constructed. So yeah, things like gender roles in romance are much more complicated than like these very simple stories. But I think something we also have to grapple with is the idea that like these people are like, obviously we're studying the medieval, but there are also scholars of the medieval who are far right, who have like looked very closely into stuff, but they've come to very different conclusions. And then that is kind of like a scary thought. It's like, are these people kind of doing very similar things to what we're doing? It's not that they haven't looked into it enough, which I think that personally, like a lot of the stuff that's in the medieval is much more complicated than these simple stories, and if you do look into it, it challenges those. But also, like, what about all these philologists, like in the Victorian era, who are very, they were very like complicated, like learned people. They were looking at these things, but they say things like, we need to find the pure language of our ancestors. Like, how, like, we might go like, oh, how do those two things reconcile? But we also, I guess we have this responsibility to think about how we're studying and making sure that we have kind of human rights and like kindness and decency at the core of our study at the same time, and that we're led by kind of these values, and that we think critically, and that we make sure that kind of we're not kind of leading ourselves into territory where we're beginning to say these really harmful things, like not in a self-censoring way, just in a like be a kind of a nice decent human being while being a medievalist, and be conscious of kind of all this history and be conscious of how things are being used in the present day. And I mean, that's the thing where I think creative criticism can be really useful, because you're sidelining like you're putting stories that have been sidelined in the limelight, and that's amazing. It can be really useful.
And I think that's why the global Middle Ages and how it's gaining more traction over time, although it's still relatively quite new and understudied. I think it's so powerful in terms of resisting that exact like right-wing extremist viewpoint that you described, because I mean, recently they found a ring, like a ring that had Allah inscribed on it, and it was found. Oh, I don't know where
Sweden?
it was found. Yeah, Sweden, but it
9th
dated
century
to
Sweden.
Yeah.
So cool.
And that's so interesting, and I think it's interesting how it's like material objects that speak to the close relationship between Europe, but then also broader, different like cultural and racial sort of contexts, and yeah, I think global Middle Ages is an interesting way to perceive it, and then how it intersects with something like creative criticism, I think brings that materiality back into back into the limelight.
Yeah. I'm also thinking, not kind of on a global Middle Ages point of view, but like bringing these people into dialogue, like Ayush with Rabia and Julian, and then also like in this ring where you have like proof of an Islamic culture in what people would have maybe considered this very like white, either pagan or Christian culture. I'm also, oh no, I lost my train of thought.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, if I remember, I'll say it. But sorry, go ahead.
No problem. But yeah, that was mainly.
Wait, I did remember.
Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
It's there's this wonderful poetry collection called Eleanor Among the Saints by Rachel Mann, who is an Anglican priest, and she's also a trans woman, and she has this very kind of like profound theology, and this conception of Eleanor Among the Saints refers to this person called Eleanor Rykener, variously also known as John Rykener. There is this kind of court records from Ellen being tried, and you have this evidence of this person who is living a life of like living as multiple genders. You have this idea, like, she's bringing Eleanor into dialogue with women like Marjorie Kemp, like Julian of Norwich, like Catherine of Siena. You also have these beautiful metrical charms about transition at the end, so if anybody's interested in that, I thoroughly recommend it. But yeah, you have these people who've been kind of sidelined and stigmatised, like, she's being brought into this kind of holy realm of, like, women. I mean, Marjorie and Julian are also sometimes considered a bit heretical as well, so you have her being in this community with all these different women, and yeah, it's really lovely blending these things that people on the outside might have been really shocked about, like the idea that someone could be Muslim in like 9th century Sweden, like how could that be? Or like how could someone who is a gender non-conforming person be like considered among these like female mystics and saints even? But they can be, and like creative criticism can bring these people together in these really unlikely, bit like the handkerchief, like these really unlikely and beautiful and surprising ways. But yes, what were you gonna say?
Oh no, I also kind of lost my train of thought. Oh wait, in terms of reception, something like Patience Agbabi's reception of the Canterbury Tales, I think is really interesting. I read some of it over the winter back, and it was very, very interesting. I think there's so much truth to the way that she transports the context of the Canterbury Tales to like modern day London, and I think it like makes transparent that global underpinning of the Middle Ages through its reception. But yeah, Izzy, Livy, do you enjoy reading any writers who've also received medieval literature in like a different context?
Can I say me?
Yeah.
Me and Anvita, who has been on the comic books episode.
Yes.
I think yes.
Yes.
So yeah, she's really lovely. Me and her are working on a Beowulf adaptation. It's a musical. It's not the Beowulf musical you'll see on social media, I'm sorry. But we're thinking of naming it What. So if you see something that comes up of that,
cool musical.
it's probably going to be us. But what you were saying about transposing Canterbury Tales onto modern day London really reminded me, because we had the desire just to make it like a, what if we just put on Beowulf and it had songs? But then we sort of started thinking that our interpretations of Beowulf, we both love Beowulf, but was like fully connected to our own experiences of life. And so some of the very, very brief synopsis, but in ours, Beowulf isn't actually in it. It's a modern day student who's kind of modelled upon us, is transposed into medieval, like Beowulf land, because they're having a bit of a breakdown in Oxford. It's not going well. They're struggling with Beowulf. They go and live it and experience it and see what they can learn from the text through that kind of connection. But I would say the main things that we like really found a parallel between the like Hare Rock Hall and kind of modern day Oxford is we were really looking at sort of the misogynistic culture of the hall versus, I think we were writing a song for Hare Rock, and the vibe we were modelling it off of was like a spoons after a football match.
And I can imagine like a crew date.
That would be more, like a crew date. Like basically loads of like guide, stereotypical misogynist alcohol, shouting, making sexual advances towards women unsolicited. That kind of thing is very much a parallel of like, you can imagine like figures of the hall making those kind of comments towards the women, that kind of thing. Also, it's a very unfinished thought, but I've been trying to do loads of creative critical work on the Grendel-kin, because I love the Grendel-kin, but using a neurodiversity lens, which I think it's one of the really nice ways where it's my experiences help me apply it to the text, but also the text helps me understand myself, and it's kind of this very bi-directional thing of I think I'm exerting a good critical influence on the world. That sounds very big-headed, but also like the text is exerting this great influence on me in kind of understanding and navigating things myself. So I'm trying to write a piece at the moment on how we can use neurodiversity theory to look at the monsters in Beowulf, specifically Grendel and his mother, and seeing how cognitive difference is a source of perceived monstrosity,
Yes.
and how that parallels kind of modern day conceptions of ableism and kind of people that are cognitively different being seen as monstrous.
Yes. I mean, that's one thing that the 2007 Beowulf is interestingly productive
This
about.
is true. I did really relate to the Grendel with his hands over his
Yes.
ears. I'm like, that is also me, Grendel.
Because the reason he kills everyone in the hall is because he's really sensitive to sound.
Yeah.
He gets mad and then he kills everyone, which
Do not condone the
don't
killing
do
anyone.
that. But it's really interesting because that's not something that's in the text.
Yeah, and I
originally.
think, returning to Laura Varnum, the incredible Beowulf reception, she said in a book talk that I think maybe all of us went to actually, on how Grendel's mother going back and killing Aschir and trying to kind of redeem her son is actually her attempt at speaking the language of the hall, because like she's tried so hard
That's
to
really
communicate.
interesting.
Yeah, and that like the only way to get them to listen is to kill someone, because that's what they all do.
Yeah.
Like it's not like they're these perfect people that have never murdered someone. And so it's that kind of, I just think Grendel's mother is such a beautiful example of masking,
Yeah.
and it's probably not particularly critical, but
It is critical
that
because
idea
your
of,
own
like-
feelings and emotions are a like critical kind of lodestone or compass as well. And I think it's so important to like, I've had experiences, certainly, I don't doubt that maybe some of us have also had, where we put forward an idea and maybe like because it resonates with something in us, and maybe a tutor goes, oh, are you sure about that? Or I often get the, oh, you need to be careful with that, which really irks me sometimes. Because like obviously like I know that I need to like have this grounding in like a critical basis. I need to have this kind of academic standard to like play to a rubric or whatever, but I think we really overlook the importance of emotion and experience as like this critical compass and something that leads us to things that maybe other people haven't. And isn't that kind of what academia is all about? Like these resonances are so important. There's definitely something somewhere. I always want to find a source for this, but someone undoubtedly has written, especially like it's probably in queer theory a lot, but like these resonances that you don't always know why you resonate with a character, but you just feel it and you know you do, and then maybe a little bit later upon reflection you're like, oh, maybe that is why. Especially this like kind of unknowing, like Izzy talked about earlier, like the Grendelkin leading you to understand something about yourself, or Marjorie leading you to understand something about yourself. That's kind of those resonances that you don't quite have a name for, you can't quite put to words, leading you somewhere that can be incredibly fruitful and incredibly important. But yeah, don't undersell yourself.
that kind of idea of unknowing. Sorry, am I good to keep?
Yeah, go ahead.
The idea of apophatic spirituality is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. And again, I'm just really on my neurodiversity grind at the moment.
Quickly
Could we
explain what
define
apophatic
spirituality
sorry.
for
Yes.
our listeners?
Oh, I might get this wrong. Okay, so in my interpretation is, in medieval mysticism, there are two kinds of spirituality, apophatic and cataphatic.
Yes.
So one is describing, I should say which one, apophatic spirituality is kind of the unknowing.
Yes.
So like describing God through what he is not.
Yes.
So yeah, describing through negation, whereas cataphatic is describing through what he is. So like a very simple example would be, apophatic would be God is not bad, and then cataphatic would be God is good.
Yes.
But obviously it gets more complex in actual theology. Yay, thank you. So apophatic spirituality, again, I felt that kind of, I'm not sure why, kinship with it. And then I was thinking, and because I think I struggle with alexithymia, which is sort of feeling, not knowing how to articulate. It's very ironic that I can't find a way to articulate it. But that like kind of having big feelings inside you and not being able to name them, describe them, kind of the sense of knowing something's wrong, but not being able to know if you're sad, angry, upset, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think when I was reading a lot of the mysticism stuff it wasn't really an essay, it was more just like a word vomit of things I found interesting. And the thing of a lot of these mystics, female mystics, experienced really intense apophatic spirituality, and kind of having to realise things through their bodies, which I know I was looking at, what's his name? The Mirror? No, the other one. The Cloud of Unknowing. Which is sort of, it's like, it's very similar in that like you have to not know stuff, but it's also very against using your body to understand things, whereas like Marjorie and Julian, less so Julian actually, but are very experienced things through your body. So Marjorie's conception of kind of faith and spirituality, she feels it very physically. Her and some other mystics, they engage in things like self-harm and kind of self-destructive behaviours as a way of mapping that feeling onto their bodies, and then kind of mapping that onto the idea of modern day people who are having that thing of like, I feel like alexithymia is a kind of apophatic spirituality, but instead of spirituality it's like emotion, and that it's the same thing of feeling it in their body, often mapping it onto their body. And I think that parallel is another really nice Caroline Dinshaw touching across time. One day I'll make a lino print inspired by it.
Yeah.
That would be very cool.
Yay.
Yeah, no, I think that was really interesting. And neurodiversity theory and how it applies to medieval literature isn't something we've had the chance to touch upon, but does anyone have any like
So Ella, this is
concluding
your
thoughts?
So big.
I know. We're nearly about to like reach more than an hour, but
Yes.
any like concluding thoughts, things you're looking forward to, especially like how you think whether that's like the global Middle Ages, creative criticism, neurodiversity theory, its application to medieval literature, how do you think that's going to change like over time? What do you see the future of it looking like? I mean, you guys have a lot more experience in it than I do, so
I think that it's really useful in a time where so much creativity is becoming like, you see a lot more AI creativity, you see a lot of medieval covers that are made with AI, and I think there is like, the more that happens, the more creative criticism becomes even more important, and it has a place, because the thing about creative criticism that's so important is the process of making and the process of like doing something with your hands, with your ideas, and like making something manifest in the world, but like being there for the process, embodying the process and how important that process is. And with AI, you put the thing in, you skip the process and get to the end.
that is exactly what I was thinking. Like
Yes.
that is like nearly word for word
Wow.
exactly what I was
Yeah.
going to say.
But yeah, that just like you ruin so much, and also sometimes like AI art sucks. Like AI medieval stuff sucks, because and how joyful it is to be in that process and explore those things and like create something completely unique. One of my favorite things I've seen is like people who are mad at AI art being like, I saw one this morning that was like generating a panda drinking lemonade. Someone just takes a massive glass of water, chugs it, instead of like AI drinking all the water, and then makes a panda out of like collage. I think we need to do more of that. I think we need to chug water and then like make a Kunewolf scarf, or create water and like write a beautiful poem about like, I don't know, your favourite mystic or something. But yeah, I don't know if maybe Libby or Izzy have thoughts either.
No, I think I agree. I do think it's going to become more common and more practiced within universities, just because I can see other tutors using it more. Not many, but like last year we didn't do any creative criticism.
Yes.
But then when I had my tutor for Old English, Rachel, she asked us to do something over the summer vac.
I think I'm hearing more and more people
discussing it.
engaging with it.
And I think as well, because people are going to like, well, hopefully people here, potentially, if that's what they want to do, become scholars, we're going to then introduce that to students and invite them to do that. And it works not just as a way of process and learning, but also as a way of revision and sort of synthesizing all the information in new and different ways. It's like when we have to do essay cards, I feel like it's the same thing, because you're bringing different points and putting them together in ways that you've not thought before.
Crumpling the napkin.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly. And that's I think the very exciting thing about creative criticism. It's such a baby field. Like, it's only kind of started up in the last like, I don't know, like 5 years maybe, even less. So we're kind of growing up as scholars alongside it, which is so exciting. So like, we're kind of the new generation of creative critics, and that is so fun and so exciting that I don't know, like, if any of us go into academia, maybe one day we will be giving our students a creative critical exercise.
Oh, I'm going to make people make me so many scarves.
And
Give
then
a
you
scarf,
can
get a
wear
scarf.
them all to all your lectures in the winter. Probably not the summer.
No.
No. Maybe Aska.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, thanks so much for that, guys. It was a really fun conversation. I enjoyed it, and I'm sure our listeners have.
It's been so lovely.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
Yes, and so interesting for my own thoughts and like ideas and stuff.
I learned so much about like creative criticism and it was really, really fun. And to all our listeners, I hope you enjoyed that too.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for tuning in this week. Join me in the next episode of Interwoven as we continue unraveling the winding threads of literature.